Hello, this is Gunmaker Dude here, and a lot of people have requested that I make a video on certain features of certain design paperweights and you know, the things you need to know before you buy. So the first thing is get a little education about the customers. By the way, this is a finished paperweight of my own, but I'm going to use it so I can point out certain features and ideas that I have on the subject. First things first, when you get a paperweight home, be certain that everything's cool about it before you buy, or before you cut it. If you cut, once you drill a hole, remove chips, it's no longer 80%, it's no longer a non-gun. So you can't just ship it back to the factory. So inspect the edges for dings or damage. If you've got your takedown pins that go in here, make sure they actually go through the holes. I've seen some customers, these come from the paperweight manufacturers, I've seen some customers who either the hole wasn't reamed big enough or it was anodized so heavily that the takedown pins wouldn't go through, and we had to use a carbide reamer to open them up for them. If that paperweight manufacturer has a piece of hardware that goes in here for your bolt stop pin, make sure that hardware is included, because there's several companies doing that. It's a great idea, but they're all using different threads and pin sizes and such, so be sure that you've got all that. Now on the you know, the other thing that people have asked me a lot about is 60-61 or 70-75. Honestly, there is a big difference in overall strength and hardness between the 70-75 and the 60-61. However, in these cross sections, it's not going to make a big huge difference. These cross sections are so thin that, you know, even though the tensile strength is up and the hardness is up by a bit, and remember, they're not, aluminum isn't real hard anyway, but it shouldn't make a big difference to you. They're both going to perform admirably well without any, you know, getting into any extremes. So now the other thing is billet, forged, cast. Your billet paperweights are going to be the most accurately made. Why? Because everything starts out square. With forgings, everything starts out crooked. Okay, and when things start out crooked, it's hard to ever get them square without machining all the surfaces. However, both are going to perform really well if they're made by a good paperweight manufacturer and if you do a really good job on your cavities. The next thing you got to know is that there's a little bit of a rogue element in the AR-15 or 223 paperweights. There's a huge rogue element making 308 paperweights, and now we're going to get into that. What that means is that amongst the paperweight manufacturers, in AR-15s, there's really only one thing that varies a whole lot. Maybe there's a couple of external features, how things look out here, if it's a billet, but for the most part, they're very, very similar. But the big difference is the thickness from this surface here to this surface here. This one happens to be 868. The standard seems to be about 875, but the original design was 0.905 instead of 0.875. Most paperweight manufacturers are using 875 for their standard. This one's just a little short of that. It's 868 is what it measures, 0.868 inches. Now, the thing you got to remember though is that if I buy a paperweight fixture from this company, okay, and it's made to work with their paperweights that are around 0.870, if I put that set of fixtures, my holes will be in the right place here for the fire control group, but I'm going to end up with an offset of 30 thousandths in these two walls here. That's a real problem because it's really going to look lopsided. It might work, but it's not really the kind of thing I like to do. I did this on my own CNC machine, so I'm within 1,000th of thickness on either side of these. I mean, I'm just right dead center, and it doesn't matter. This could be 2 inches thick, and I would still be right dead center because I dial it in on the machine. So just remember that if you buy, you can't buy the cheapest fixture you can find from one company and the cheapest paperweight you can find from another company. They may work together in a 223 or an AR-15, maybe, but only if you know that those critical dimensions are the same, okay? and they may not work very well. Now, when we get into the 308s, we need to talk about the variables with the 308s. Huge rogue element with the 308s, and what that basically means is that very little fixture paperweight intercompatibility between the companies. Not only do they vary this thickness here, but the location of the fire control group holes can vary by as much as I've seen them go. They can be from the original AR-10. They're almost all at least 40 thousandths back of where the original AR-10 holes were, and that's because the AR-10 hammer and trigger were different than the AR-15. But what decides where these have to be with the paperweight is where they put the safety plunger hole right here. And actually you can see it right there. And is that right? Am I looking at the right thing? No, sorry, it's right here. And what it is if this is 60 thousandths back and you put it where the original AR-10 was, you're going to be 60 thousandths off. But there's another company that has theirs 100 thousandths back of that. So what that means is that a fixture from one company where they're at one dimension, you could have paperweights where this hole is 40 thousandths that way or 100 thousandths to the rear, and they're not going to line up. So when your plunger comes up, your selector may not even rotate all the way enough to release the safety. You know, it'll still be blocking the trigger. Very important to understand that you cannot mix and match at all with the 308s. So you can't buy a fixture from one company and use it with another company's paperweight. Now, it is possible, because I haven't seen them all yet, that there's a couple companies where you can use this guy's fixture and you can use that guy's paperweights. They're interchangeable because they're using the same dimensions, but you need to know what that dimension is, and the only way to do it for me is I dial in the 0 point here, and then I measure to the hole. I put a precision pin in there and I measure to that, and I know exactly where the center of that hole is, and that's how I know where these need to be. Also, the paperweights vary in that fixture. I really hope that this information helps everybody out. I promise I keep this video fairly short, and I hope to see you again.